Are you an early career researcher or a PhD student who's thinking about doing a postdoc but don't know where to start? Well, you're in luck because today we're talking 8 ways in how to get a postdoc. Hi there, my name's Dr. Ken Dutton-Regester, and today we're talking about how to get a postdoc. To give you a bit of background, if you don't know who I am, I finished my PhD in melanoma genomics back in 2012. At the completion of that, I did a postdoc overseas in Boston at the Broad Institute and Dana-Farber Cancer Institute for 2.5 years, before coming back to Australia, and have continued on to build an independent research program. So over the years, I've seen a number of my colleagues, including myself, successfully get postdocs in a wide variety of different ways. So today we're talking about 8 different ways in how to find a postdoc. So option number 1, job boards. Now this is probably the most logical way to go about it. A lot of journals have job boards on them, so Nature and Science, for example, where institutions and researchers can upload their jobs or postdoc positions that are currently available. I think also Seek and those type of job boards or online platforms may also advertise postdocs. Now, this seems pretty logical. That's probably how a lot of other people may get jobs. But in my experience, I find that this can be a little bit patchy as to whether you'll be successful or not. Mainly because either A, they're super competitive because a lot of people tend to see them, or B, unfortunately, a lot of these jobs tend to be advertised, but they already have someone in mind who they're going to fill that position. So in some countries, human resources may dictate, or the law may dictate, that any job needs to be advertised to the general community, even if you have someone already planning to fill it. So unless you're some exceptional candidate who's going to be better than the person that they might already have planned for it, it's unlikely you're going to get those ones. So I'm not saying that there is, but there may be a lot of jobs on these job boards that may have already been filled, and going through that process, applying for them, is essentially a bit of a waste of time. So definitely think about job boards, but there are a different number of ways. So point number 2, cold calling. This one's a little bit more extreme, and this is where you approach some scientist that you really admire their work, and try to connect with them to see if they have a postdoc available. So this can be via email, via call, meeting them at a conference. All of these are different ways that you potentially bring up the subject of seeing if they have a postdoc. Now the problem with a cold call is that they don't know who you are, and the chances, particularly if you send an email, of them replying to it can be greatly diminished. So if you're going down this approach, it's probably trying better to go for a warm invite. So getting someone that you know, that they know, that they can connect you with, i.e. providing you with some social currency that they're suggesting you forward or making the connection for you. So while cold calling can be very hit and miss, it can be useful because you can potentially get to the person that you really want to work with, and maybe they're in the process of about to advertise a postdoc, and you get in there early and you might just be lucky. So definitely don't think about cold calling, even though if you look at other people's responses of if they're successful or not, maybe patchy, they can sometimes be successful. Point number 3, and I've already mentioned this a little bit already, is tapping into your mentor network. So often your mentor, if they're really established and they're traveling a lot, going to a lot of conferences, they're often talking to other similar colleagues with similar backgrounds or potential labs that you might be interested in working with. And if they've got a very tight relationship, there tends to be this phenomenon of sharing talent between labs, or looking out for each other when they know that someone's talented, and trying to help them get to another position, or helping out another researcher or colleague that they know of that may need a talented researcher, i.e. you. So definitely see if you can tap into your mentor network. And this is a really good time, a year or 2 years out of you thinking about going and applying for a postdoc, talking to your mentor saying, you know what, I'm doing my PhD, I'm looking to do a postdoc, I want to do more research. Do you know of anyone in your network that might be looking for a postdoc in this time frame? Or can you start putting some feelers out for me? Now this is a really great way because it instantly is a warm connection, and it can be something that is, a relationship that is tightly established and leads a lot of credibility when they put your name forward. So this can be a really powerful way to get a postdoc. On the negative side, you might have a mentor that doesn't have as many deep connections. And this is where choosing one of these other options that we're talking about today may be a better approach. So strategy number 4 is to tap into your personal network. So it's not only your mentor that has a potential network, it's you. So think about any of the colleagues that you know, any of your collaborators that you might have been doing work with, or even just putting out a call on your social media platforms if you have them. So we're talking LinkedIn, Twitter. These can be 2 great platforms that a lot of scientists and professionals hang out on and are scrolling through different news feeds. I've definitely seen a number of my colleagues put out there, even in their profile bios, looking for postdoc opportunities, have skill sets in insert skill sets. Or they might put out a particular post saying, hey, I'm finishing my PhD in December, I'll be looking for a postdoc in January. Does anyone have any opportunities out there, or is looking for some talent who has skill sets in insert your skill set? This can be a really powerful way, particularly if you know a lot of collaborators or other teams nationally, internationally on social media platforms. So definitely tap into your own network. So strategy number 5, looking internally. So here, a lot of institutes and universities that you're working in or doing your PhD in will often have staff turnover or have postdocs leaving and coming in. So here, just putting the call out through the internal network, maybe there's even a job board, for example, that you can pitch your services or pitch that you're looking for a postdoc, or maybe there's a job board that they have them for the institute or university themselves. Definitely tap into that. Or just start putting some feelers out for the particular labs in your faculty that really make sense and that you would like to work for. Or maybe it's just meeting them in the hallway. Maybe you see another mentor or a senior researcher who you think would be good, and you can just put that feeler out there. Hey, I'm finishing my PhD up. Would you happen to have any postdoc work or need a postdoc to fill in some shoes? So that's definitely a good strategy to look for a potential postdoc. So strategy number 6 is attend conferences. Now, I know that attending conferences can be limited depending on your situation, but if you can make one, it can be definitely really good networking and have the ability to get yourself a postdoc. So here, what you're looking to do is try and make connections with the researchers that you would like to work with, or even B, just being in the audience. Oftentimes you'll see senior scientists come up before they get into their presentation. Maybe they say, hey, we're looking for postdocs. If you like any of this presentation, come hit me up afterwards. Or maybe they say that at the end of their presentation. So even just listening to the seminars, but particularly going out there with targeted networking, can be a really good way to potentially find that postdoc that you really would like. So tip number 7 is doing a postdoc tour. Now this is something that I did at the end of my PhD, so I think about a year out. Luckily, my mentor had the funding to help me go overseas to the US to talk at 5 different cities, talking about the research that I had done during my PhD, but also use that as a way to sort of start the conversation about potentially getting a postdoc. So here you sort of I guess, disguise or pitch what your site visit is about is just talking about your PhD research. But then you can also slip in that little bit of aspect of, hey, I'm also looking for a postdoc, so I would love to talk at your institute for both of these reasons. Again, this could be useful if your mentor knows people there and can help connect you. That's usually the best way to do it. Or maybe you've got a colleague or friend that works at that institution who can get you a seminar speaking spot. But here, I definitely found, for me personally, this was incredibly useful in order to facilitate me getting a postdoc moving forward. It also helps you talk about your science more and raise your profile and awareness of what you did during your PhD. So regardless of even if you get a postdoc, at least you can put this on your track record, or at least get more exposure and build your networks at the same time. And lastly, and probably one of the most difficult but most rewarding ways, number 8, applying for funding through fellowships or scholarships. Now, this is something that I managed to do, and it's definitely something I would recommend, and probably most mentors would recommend if you can do it. So applying for funding obviously takes a little bit of time. So you need to plan, sometimes up to a year in advance before you can get that funding. But it does give you that flexibility of being able to enter into pretty much any lab in the world, within reason, a lot more flexibly, because you're bringing your own funding. So for the lab head that might be hosting you, it's less of a commitment because all they're now paying for is just the project funds. So the funds required for you to do the experiments. They don't need to pay for your salary. And so because of this, if you can get that funding, sometimes you can get a sort of backdoor entry to some of these high profile labs that with your current existing track record may not have got in. Now, this definitely happened for me. I think the lab that I ended up doing my postdoc in was a very well-known, highly competitive lab, and I know my track record probably would have been a little bit questionable as to whether I had the caliber to be in there. But because I approached that principal investigator a year in advance, and I said, you know what, I really love the work that you're doing. I would love to do my postdoc with you. I'm thinking about applying for a grant. If I get it, I'll come over. If I don't, we don't worry about it and we'll move on. And who's going to say no to that? There's very few people that may say no to that option. I guess everyone has a different situation, but in general, it seems like a pretty good deal. You bring in funding, that sounds pretty good to me. So if you can do it, definitely think about applying for fellowship. Not only can it get you into a really good postdoc that you really want to do, but it's going to look good on your track record, and it's going to help you apply for grant funding down the line. So definitely, if you can, get some funding. In summary, over those last 8 points, you may notice a common theme, and that is networking. Networking is incredibly important, and pretty much nearly all of those 8 points involve some networking capacity. So it's really important to put yourself out there and begin to build your collaborative network as early as possible. Now, I know networking doesn't come easy to a lot of people, so next episode, we're going to be talking about different ways in how to effectively network at a scientific conference. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, and remember, nothing ventured, nothing gained.